how dangerous a job it was. I have some papers here where if you watch the event last night, this is, by the way, my all-time favorite chart, which is because if you've watched last night, you wouldn't know the border was so bad. This was right here, this arrow on the bottom, lowest ever. This is made by Border Patrol. That's the lowest ever we had for illegal aliens coming into our country. And that was the week I left office. That's the lowest ever. Now, this chart is very dear to my heart for another reason. This was the chart. I said, let me see it. But it says a lot. And we had a couple of instances last night where things were mentioned, so I got it. Did crime rise under Trump and fall under Biden? They said it rose under Trump and they go, no, the opposite is true. Take a look at this here. It said, is it true? Did crime rise under Trump and fall under Biden? No, comma, the opposite is true. This was a study group that went out and doesn't care. They do the numbers. And there was another one that a historical comparison of the collapse of law enforcement in U.S. cities, the drop in arrest rates over the last few years is without precedent. Lowest arrest rates we've ever seen. They don't arrest people anymore. And they shouldn't arrest people for saying the election was rigged, but they like that. They go after guys like me, but they don't go after people that kill people. It's a shame what's happened in our country, but we're going to turn it around. We're going to win big, and we're going to turn it around. We're going to turn it around fast. Thank you. Thank you. We'll bust up and dismantle the gangs, savage criminal networks, and bloodthirsty cartels, and we will stop the fentanyl, and we'll make sure that Kamala Harris has and all of the people that she's allowed to come across the border. Don't forget, she was the border czar, whether she wants to hear it or not. She still is. You're right. Thank you. In fact, she could do it right now. You know, they like to talk. It's all nonsense. That Donald Trump stopped a bill. I was opposed to it. So was everyone else. It was the weakest bill. Under that bill, millions of people would have been allowed to come in. This was a weak bill. But you didn't need a bill. I didn't have a bill. I said, close the border. And that's how we got to those numbers, the lowest ever recorded. I said, close the border. I didn't have a bill. I didn't need a bill. She doesn't need a bill. Biden doesn't know where he is. So where is he? Whatever happened to him? He got out. He got out. He's now sunbathing. He's in a beach someplace. But all he would have to do as president or her is say, close up the border. And it's closed. But they don't want to close the border. Because when they first took over, I had built hundreds of miles of wall, and I had 200 miles of wall in addition to what I said I was going to do, because certain areas needed it. As we closed areas, other areas became very, very strong in terms of people wanting to come through. So I bought 200 additional miles. It would have taken them about 3 weeks to erect it. We were all set to erect it. Then we had a terrible election take place, terrible election, and everybody here knows that. And I realized that they don't want to do it. And they actually sold that, and that was designed to the highest specifications of, when you look at the steel, it's concrete, 5,000-pound concrete inside, and then rebar. And it also has a lot of technology, wires and things in it for high technology. It was designed to the highest specs of the Border Patrol. I wanted actually concrete plank. I would have done a beautiful job with precast, like you have in parking garages, long span. It's called long span precast, but they had to be able to see through. I understand that. They needed certain things that you can't do with concrete plank. So we did that, and very expensive to do because you needed all sorts. In other words, they wanted the steel, they wanted the concrete. It's all different methods of very hard to cut it, very hard to do it when you have different substances, and then very powerful rebar inside. And what happened is, as soon as they came in, they sold it for 5 cents on the dollar. They sold this stuff for somebody made a lot of money because that steel is very valuable, but they sold all of that, hundreds of miles of stuff. You saw it stacked up for a long period of time, where they stacked it up in an area because Texas wanted to use it and finish the job. We built hundreds of miles. but Texas wanted it. They would have paid for it. They didn't. They refused to sell it to Texas. They refused to sell it to Arizona, and they refused to sell it to anybody. They sold it to the junkyards, I guess, and 5 cents on the dollar. On day one, I will seal the border. I will stop the invasion. We had the border sealed. I had Mexico. I had thousands of soldiers from Mexico, free of charge. I said to the president, you must give us soldiers because they're coming through. The caravans are coming through your country. No, I cannot do that. I said, yes, you'll do that. If you don't do that, I'm going to put tariffs on your cars. And he said, I will do that, sir. And he did it. He did it very quickly. And it really, you guys heard all about it, made a great difference. We had thousands of Mexican soldiers guarding our border. I said, look, they're coming through your country. You have to guard your southern border, which is their border on the other side. And all of a sudden they started, and we had Remain in Mexico. It's called a Remain in Mexico policy, which we never had. And they stayed in Tijuana, different places, hundreds of thousands of people. They didn't come into our country until they were checked. And then if they were good, we let them in. If they weren't, we wouldn't let them in. And we worked well with Mexico, actually. But now Mexico has really taken advantage of our country. They want billions of dollars just to talk. They wouldn't say that with me. They wanted, I think, $2 billion to talk, right? We will talk. We want $2 billion before we even start. That wouldn't happen with me. I would say, oh, really? Is that right? That's the end of trade with Mexico. And they would say, sir, we will give you $2 billion. How about that? So I'll send Kamala's illegal aliens back home where they belong. We have a problem because when I came in, they wouldn't accept MS-13 gang members. I told the generals we're going to get the gang members out. ICE and Border Patrol, the job these people do, but ICE would go into the country, get the MS-13 gang members out, the meanest, the most vicious. They kill people with knives. They killed 2 young students walking to school, 2 beautiful young 16-year-old girls walking to school. They killed them up and chopped them up into pieces with knives, dead. And ICE goes in and they go into those packs of rough people. And ICE is rougher than they are. These are incredible, brave patriots. A lot of people wouldn't want that job. You see fists and feet, you see everything flying, and then 2 minutes later they stand up and they grab them and they throw them into what they used to call a paddy wagon. They put them into planes, they take them out. The countries wouldn't take them back under President Obama. And I said, really, they're not going to take them back? Well, if they're not going to take them back, I'm going to stop paying them. I said, how much money do we pay these countries? El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and others. He said, how much money do we pay? $750 million. I said, good, inform them we're not paying them anymore. And the following morning, I got calls from all of these countries. Sir, there must be a misunderstanding. We would love to take them back. We would love to have MS-13. We would love to have MS-13 back in our country. It would be a great honor to have them back. And, before we get too far, and we're almost finished, but before we get too far, I want to tell you that we have criminals from all over the world pouring into our country right now. Your job will never be obsolete, It will never be obsolete, unfortunately. It would be nice if we could have peace, but we're not going to have peace. And this is something we're going to have to live with for a long time. She has allowed millions of people, open border, to flow into our country totally unchecked, totally unvetted. And they come from jails and prisons, slightly different. They come from mental institutions all over the world. This isn't just in South America. People think it's South America. It's from Africa, Asia, the Middle East. A lot of people coming from the Congo in Africa, the Congo. Rough. And they're prisoners. They're prisoners. And we say, where do you come from? Africa. Where in Africa? Prison. What did you do? We don't want to say. They turn out to be murderers. These are rough people. And we're allowing them into our country from all over the world. From South America, yes, but from all over the world. They come from insane asylums. And many are terrorists. So we have prisoners, mental patients, mental institution patients, terrorists pouring into our country, totally unchecked, unvetted. We have some of the worst terrorists in the world. We know where they are approximately, but we don't know too much. But we know they're the worst. We have the worst terrorists in the world pouring into our country. And she's the president and wants to be the president of the United States. She's vice president. She could do it. She's in charge of the border. She could have closed up the border. She should have closed it up. They could have told Mexico, if you don't do it, we're not going to do something. We're not going to have trade. We're not going to deal with you. We're not going to let you sell your cars into the United States at these ridiculous – they took 32% of our car industry over many years. They took it out of Detroit. They took it out of different places, but they took it, and they took it big from this state, from South Carolina, from a lot of different places. They took 32%, and I think now the number is bigger. You know, I don't know if you know that they're building some of the biggest car plants in the world right now in Mexico. Wouldn't have happened with me. Right now in Mexico, and China's the one building them, and they think they're going to make these cars, and then release them into the United States without tax. It's not going to happen. We'll put 100% to a 200% tariff. We're not going to let it happen because all of our jobs from your state will be gone. And I watched this union head. He's an incompetent guy. He's approving for what he did, for what he's allowed. Every job, every auto worker here will be out of a job within 3 years if I'm not elected. Every auto worker in the state, they're all going to be made in China. They're going to an all-electric policy. Well, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any country in the world, but we don't have for what you need for an electric car. But China does, and its territories do, and we're not going to let it happen. But they're building some of the biggest